Imagine a machine that can circumnavigate the entire globe, operating well clear of the most sophisticated radar networks ever devised by humanity, and deliver a payload capable of neutralizing a heavily defended strategic objective thousands of miles away. This is not the realm of science fiction or speculative futurism, this is the reality of the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit. For decades, this flying wing has dominated the skies as a masterpiece of aerospace engineering that looks less like a traditional aircraft and more like a visiting entity from another dimension. But how does a single airplane come to command such astronomical financial resources? And more importantly, in an era defined by hypersonic missiles, quantum computing, and omnipresent satellite surveillance, does this high-altitude marvel still hold tactical dominance? To truly understand the B-2, we must travel back through the geopolitical landscape to the absolute height of the Cold War. In the late 1970s, the United States military faced a terrifying strategic problem that threatened to render its entire strategic doctrine obsolete. Soviet air defense networks were becoming dangerously advanced, weaving an interconnected web of early warning radars, surface-to-air missile batteries, and interceptor aircraft. Traditional bombers like the B-52, as magnificent and reliable as they were for their era, were essentially flying brick houses on modern radar screens. They would be spotted, tracked, illuminated by targeting radars, and blasted out of the sky long before they could ever reach their primary targets deep within the Soviet interior. The Pentagon needed an entirely new paradigm of aerial warfare. They needed an aircraft capable of penetrating heavily defended enemy airspace in broad daylight or under the cover of night, dropping its precision ordnance, and flying home without ever triggering a single localized alarm. Enter the Advanced Technology Bomber Project, an initiative that would push the very boundaries of material science and aerodynamic theory. The concept of a flying wing was not entirely new to aviation. Visionary pioneers like Jack Northrop had been chasing the radical aerodynamic efficiency of the design since the 1940s. However, making a flying wing fundamentally stable during all phases of flight required a technological leap that simply did not exist during World War II: computers. Lots of them. Without a traditional fuselage, a tail, or vertical stabilizers to provide natural aerodynamic stability, the flying wing is inherently unstable, constantly fighting the unforgiving laws of physics to stay level. When Northrop Grumman finally pulled back the curtain and unveiled the B-2 to an astonished public in November 1988, it sent massive shockwaves through the global defense community. It looked like science fiction brought to tangible reality. But the real magic of the aircraft was not merely lodged in its striking, futuristic shape, it was rooted in the deeply complex science of radar evasion. Radar operates on a relatively simple yet devastatingly effective principle. It bounces electromagnetic radio waves off a solid object and listens intently for the returning echo. To completely defeat this process, the B-2 relies on three primary, deeply integrated mechanisms: aerodynamic shape, exotic radar-absorbent materials, and physics-defying digital computing power. First, we must examine the shape. There are no straight, reflective edges facing forward, no vertical tails to act as radar reflectors, and no exposed engine inlets that could bounce radio waves directly back to a hostile receiver. Every single angle, curve, and trailing edge on the B-2 is meticulously calculated to scatter incoming radar beams in every direction imaginable, ensuring that practically no energy ever bounces back to the source. Second, we must look at the skin of the aircraft. The B-2 is covered in advanced radar-absorbent materials, which are specialized chemical composites designed to trap radio waves and convert them safely into low-level heat. During maintenance cycles, highly trained technicians apply top-secret RAM coatings over every single seam, panel gap, and metallic fastener across the airframe. Even a tiny, microscopic gap the size of a fingernail could theoretically light up on a sensitive air defense radar screen like a glaring Christmas tree. To compound this complexity, maintaining a B-2 is an immense logistical challenge that is inextricably linked to its stealth capabilities. Because of its delicate, highly sensitive radar-absorbent skin, the B-2 cannot simply sit exposed to the elements in the rain, snow, or blazing sun. It requires a massive, climate-controlled shelter known as a shelter-in-place facility. After almost every major operational flight, technicians must meticulously inspect the aircraft's skin using automated laser scanners, patching any microscopic imperfections before the bomber is cleared to fly again. And finally, we must examine the thermal exhaust. Jet engines burn fuel at extreme temperatures, creating massive infrared signatures that heat-seeking missiles and orbiting satellites love to lock onto. The B-2's four General Electric F-118 turbofan engines are buried deep inside the thick wing structure, and their scorching exhausts are actively cooled and diffused across the upper surface of the aircraft before leaving the trailing edge. To an infrared camera, the B-2 is practically invisible against the freezing background of the upper atmosphere. All of this unprecedented technology sounds utterly incredible, yet it begs the question, why did the price tag for this flying wing skyrocket to such astonishing heights? The answer comes down to cold, hard economics and drastically shifting geopolitical realities. Originally, the U.S. Air Force planned to procure a healthy fleet of 132 B-2 bombers. That substantial production run would have spread the massive research and development costs across a large fleet of aircraft, bringing the per-unit price down to a manageable level. Then, the Soviet Union collapsed. Suddenly, the existential superpower threat that fundamentally justified the B-2's existence vanished overnight. Congress panicked at the staggering defense budgets of the era and abruptly slashed the procurement order from 132 down to just 21 operational aircraft. When you spend billions of dollars inventing a technology that has literally never existed before in human history, and you only build 21 copies of it, the bill for each individual unit becomes astronomical. Every single specialized tool, every custom factory mold, and every massive specialized oven used to bake the carbon composite wings had to be paid for by a tiny handful of airframes. Despite the jaw-dropping financial investment and the intense maintenance overhead required to keep it airborne, the B-2 has proven its immense tactical worth in combat time and time again. It made its historic combat debut during the Kosovo War in 1999, flying grueling 30-hour round-trip missions directly from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri straight into the heart of the Balkans. Later, B-2s spearheaded the opening salvos of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan and Operation Iraqi Freedom, flying missions that lasted over 40 hours, representing some of the longest combat sorties in the entire history of aviation. During these punishing missions, the pilots literally had to take turns sleeping in a makeshift bunk located just behind the pilot's seat, surviving on military rations while managing a complex nuclear-capable bomber. In 2017, a pair of B-2s flew halfway around the world to conduct a pinpoint strike against an ISIS training camp in Libya, dropping over 100 precision-guided munitions and eliminating dozens of enemy fighters in a single devastating strike, all without ever being detected by local air defenses. Today, the B-2 stands as a monumental bridge between the analog technology of the Cold War era and the high-tech digital conflicts of the 21st century. Yet, time ultimately waits for no machine. As radar technology becomes increasingly sophisticated, incorporating quantum sensors, multi-static arrays, and low-frequency networks, even the mighty B-2 is slowly marching toward a well-earned retirement. Its successor, the B-21 Raider, is already taking to the skies, promising similar stealth capabilities at a much lower cost and with even more advanced digital systems. Yet, the B-2 Spirit remains an unmatched icon of human ingenuity. It is a machine that pushed the absolute boundaries of what is physically possible in the realm of flight, proving that when nations are pushed to the brink of innovation, we can indeed build ghosts that fly.